Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of FFS. For everyone new here, this is a podcast where Asta and I discuss all thoughts that keep us up at night and make us giggle during the day. I'm Vishwata Amudan, logging in from Houston, Texas.
I'm Asta logging in from Chandigarh, India. So let's get all caught up for friendship's sake.
So, Asta, what are we overthinking and over talking today?
This actually is a topic that we came up with because it was demonstrated very frequently for us just in the last few weeks since we started this podcast. Every time we try to set up a recording, we always are met with a lot of time issues. Like, of course, time zones. The second is work commitments, other personal commitments, managing all of that, and sort of finding a time in the middle that works for both of us has always been difficult. And that sort of got us thinking about the whole idea of work life balance. What does it even mean to us anymore? Is it even a relevant term right now? Honestly, because work, the way we've always been taught to define work is something that you do 9 to 5 or something that you do to earn money and to build a career, etc. And life
Yeah.
seems like a much, much broader term, right? It's got everything from hobbies, social life, family, etc. So, is this term even relevant anymore? What do you think, Vish?
I don't think it's a term that would ever go irrelevant, but I totally see what you're saying, right? Because as you were talking about the podcast, I was thinking like the definitions have changed. And even personally for me, I feel like few years ago, for me, work was the 9 to 5. And
Yeah,
everything after that or before that was life, right?
life.
Today, I don't know what to call this podcast. Is this work or life? It's definitely
Yeah,
not within my 9 to 5. It is a passion project today. It can, give me money someday. I don't know.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but it is not my decompressing doom scrolling time either. So
absolutely.
I feel like today I look at work as a more multidimensional thing compared
Of
to
course.
how I looked at few years ago, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely think the definitions have changed, but I'm just thinking more so about how to balance this out because now it's not just two things and it's not
Mm-hmm.
clearly defined, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you feel like the need for balance more now because of this, because there are like so many things you want to do, and is it just an age thing for us right now, or is it more of a universal thing?
I would say that the definition changing is definitely why I said work life balance as we are taught it has become irrelevant because,
Hmm.
say, 5 years ago when I started working, for me, balance meant having enough time on weekends to go out with my friends. It meant having enough PTO to take a trip
Yeah.
that I wanted to take in the year. Um, but at the same time, now that I think back, for my mom at that time, I'm sure work life balance looked a lot different and
Mhm.
it had a lot more day to day implications than it did for me. She needed time for the house, she needed time to spend with me, with my dad. She needed time on a daily basis, split between her work and her life, as we call it. And I don't live alone anymore, right? I live
Mhm.
with my in laws, I live with my husband, which means in the morning there are certain responsibilities that are mine. So I cannot simply wake up and jump on a call or wake up and head out for a meeting, right? Whereas when I was living alone back in the US, or I'm sure for you right now, you have your own schedule to manage. And that, I'm assuming, gives you some amount of liberty to move things around, right? So what we call balance changes
Mhm.
when you take into account all of these external factors of life, as we're calling it right now.
No, I agree. Yes, it's definitely more freedom
Yeah,
with your schedule because you're not taking into consideration anybody else's schedule. But then like you pretty much do everything on your own also. So
yeah,
it does change the life part of it a little bit.
absolutely.
But all of this got disrupted for a bit in the middle when I had to go back home during COVID. Because that
Yeah,
for one, put a lot of things into perspective, and for two,
Yeah.
change some things altogether for me. Like, I don't think life is ever going to go back to what it was before. But
Mhm.
before I go into what it did to me, like, how was COVID for you? Like, how did your work life balance change?
For me, the first few months of COVID were mayhem.
Mm.
I had lost sense of time. Um, I would wake up and the first thing I would check is work, maybe an email, maybe check sales on Shopify or something like that. And then I would also work till the time I fell asleep.
Mm.
But that didn't mean I worked from dawn to dusk. I just simply worked. There would be days where, say, from 11 to 4, I'm not doing anything. And then from
Yeah.
4 to 11, I'm working. So that disrupted a lot of um, just my sense of routine and scheduling. But I think it sort of came back when we heard that, okay, this is indefinite, we don't know
Yeah.
when we're going back. I started actively training myself to get a routine, and then it just, but it changed my routines and my internal programming, I think, forever.
Right. You know what? Like for me, I think it was largely different from what you just said, simply because
Mm-hmm.
I think finally I found a routine during COVID. I found a routine outside of work, right? Because when I was working, the job that I had was far from where I lived. So I spent a lot of time traveling. So everything in my life was just about that. And I would
Yeah.
crave those days of like traveling or PTO.
Yeah.
And as much as I had a good friend group at work and we would hang out after work, go get dinner or something, it still felt like you only have like 3 hours outside of
Yeah.
working.
Yeah.
But once COVID hit, I moved back home. Then, like, because I was working from home and I got that travel time back, it felt like I could do stuff in the morning, I could do stuff in the
Yeah.
evening. And,
Yeah.
so that was like a huge thing around how I
Yeah.
started looking at life outside of work. But another thing that happened was this need of figuring what to
Yeah.
wear or getting yourself waxed, getting your nails done. Suddenly, all of these needs vanished, and I was like feeling so liberated. It was just interesting to me at that point, and I remember
Yeah.
thinking about this then because I was like, is this just about what other people think? And just because I was going to work, was I doing this? Or
Yeah.
because there were some days during COVID where I would just want to dress up because I miss it, right? So I think it was a bit of both, and that's why I love hybrid. I'm a big fan of this whole hybrid
Absolutely.
work culture.
Funny you should say that, because one of the things that actually helped me get a routine during COVID was making sure I dressed up in the morning.
Hmm.
Of course, I didn't go full out like I would do if I was going to work, but I did put on a good outfit, not my pajamas, did my skincare, and
Hmm.
sat down in front of my laptop on a desk. Like that, the physical act of preparing to work really helped me get both in the zone and out of it.
Yeah. I was just going to bring up this other thing that I just got to talk about at work recently.
Hmm.
So I realized when I was working from home during COVID, there were some new people who joined my company then. I was just enjoying the remote work because I already had a friend group. Although I was not meeting them, I could just call them and like chat
Yeah,
with them, and we had WhatsApp groups and everything was fine, right? But for people who joined during COVID, for the next 2 years, they had no sense of teams and like how does the dynamic
yeah,
work, who are the people there. They had like no social connect within the company. And
yeah,
that's when I realized how much of a difference it makes, because some days the only motivation to go to work is your work bestie. Like that has
absolutely.
happened to me, and that's the best thing that happened to me. So
Absolutely. I think, look, when we're doing anything,
hmm,
say if we're going to do hobbies, or if we're going to invest in building a good friend circle, we're doing that for a sense of peace, a sense of belonging, a sense of achievement. But the thing is, just as spending time with a friend can make you feel cherished, can make you feel peaceful, or even give you a sense of belonging, work can do that too. Your team at work could be the people that make you feel rewarded, that make you feel cherished, that make you feel like you belong there. Doing good work, or say you had a great year at work, could bring you a sense of peace. So
Yeah.
it could also give you a sense of purpose, right? That I'm accountable for this and I'm excited to do it. So
No, I agree.
it's
I
very
think. Go ahead.
it's very difficult to draw that line. I completely agree with you.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I feel like it also, like, as much as of course I advocate good work life balance, not make work your everything, it's okay to do that when you feel like it. When you feel like
Yeah,
that's what you're passionate about at whatever stage of
absolutely.
life, or just that day, it's fine. It's
Yeah,
all right.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one other thing that comes to mind when we talk of things that have altered how we look at this concept is um, where we physically are, right?
Mm.
You have worked both in India and in the US. And we've always heard, oh, US has a much better work-life balance. India has a crap work-life balance, and so many iterations of this statement. What is your take on it?
I find it like funny because I think it really comes down to that specific company, that specific team, and sometimes just that specific day.
Yeah,
Because I know so many people who have amazing work life balances in India. I had a good work life balance when I worked in India. And I know people in the US who do not have a good work life balance, right? I mean, you go ask an average employee here, they're probably going to talk about how like Europe has a better work life balance than the
the new
US.
American dream.
um yeah, is to leave. And I find it like interesting because I think you go ask someone in India or even an Indian who lives here, I find a lot of people saying, I don't want to move back because I feel like I won't be able to put up with the work culture back home.
Yeah,
And sometimes there are people who've never worked in India and they just like somehow heard this, or that's the experience
yeah,
they've noticed with their parents or the previous generation.
yeah,
But something to note is things are changing across the globe, right? It's not the same anywhere in the
absolutely.
world anymore.
100%.
Yeah. And secondly, of course, I'm not saying everybody in India has a good work life balance. It really comes down to what you choose, what the
Yeah,
company is, and things like that. So I don't really know, like how, if there is just like one country you can pick and go, because people's
yeah,
goals and dreams are also different. I don't
yeah,
know if you saw the news. There are huge protests going around France for Labor
yeah.
Day, and their wages and things like that. So I mean, it's always the grass is greener on the other side,
On the other
but
side. Absolutely.
it's important to also understand where and how. I don't want to get into the history of all of this, but I feel like there is some history to how different cultures have different work life balances, why there's so
Absolutely.
much emphasis on
Absolutely.
hardworking in Japan. And Japan's grown like it's grown. You can't deny that. And the way work is perceived in like India, like you go talk to even our parents' generation, a lot of them look at work as a very divine thing, right? Like
Yeah,
you're
it's
so
very
committed to
sacred
it.
to a lot of people. Absolutely.
Exactly. So work is worship and all
Yeah,
that. So, but it makes sense to not be toxically positive about it. It makes sense to have boundaries. But it also makes sense to understand where these things stem from so that you
yeah,
could work around it.
absolutely. I think, yes, like we have certain imbibed ideas of what work-life balance should
Hmm.
look like. But like I said before, it is a very subjective, very relative term. Balance itself is not, it, it's not a perfect definition. And recently I came across this reel on Instagram, hit the spot, which was work-life balance is not a 50-50 thing.
Hmm.
It's when you do 30-70 one day and 70-30 another when needed. So if you are somebody who um, say you want to travel somewhere, or you're not having a good mental health day, or you just have some sort of crisis or even celebration to
Hmm.
be a part of, it is okay to see if you can put your work a little bit on the back seat. At the same time, if you want the freedom to be able to do that, I think we should also be prepared to put life at a back seat when work calls for it. And this is something that I have seen firsthand from my mom. She's a CA, and March, as you can imagine, March year ending is a huge thing for her at work. And for years, we
Hmm.
knew that mom's not going to be around as much in this period.
Yeah.
And the minute this period ends around, say, the second half of April, she's gonna be like, "Oh, let's go out. Let's come sit with me, talk to me," because she wants to make up for the time that she was not there. But that's how you balance things. You can never always have equal weight on both sides. That's not the only way to balance.
Yeah.
What do you
And
think?
I agree, and I think it's important to sort of know that and understand that, because there's not just pressure about doing well at work or giving more than required time for work. There's
Yeah.
also pressure about having a life, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
on Mondays you go back to work and people are like, "What did you do over the weekend?" Sometimes I didn't do anything. Sometimes I just caught up with a little bit of work that I had. I
Yeah.
did some work so that my Monday would be easier. And I guess it's okay because, you know,
Absolutely. You don't have to
yeah,
guess.
so
It is okay.
it doesn't feel like it is, right? Because there are times when I'm just like, am I not having a good balance? Am I not doing enough things? Why am I not doing more fun things? And it's fine. I rested, I did my laundry, I did my chores, I watched two movies, and
Yeah.
I did some work, and now my Monday is a little bit more peaceful. And there will
Yeah.
be another week where, I take a flight on Friday evening and I'm back only on Monday morning, and I,
Yeah.
I was out the entire weekend. You're right. I think both can happen, and you need to
Absolutely.
give space for both, and that's where I feel like communication is also super important, because these
Yeah.
things
I
are not going to happen until you're able to communicate this both at work and at home
Yeah.
or other people in your personal life, and convey to them that, yes, now I
Yeah.
need to give more time for work, or now I need to give more time somewhere else.
I think one thing that hinders our ability to compartmentalize is this always on culture, always
Mm.
connected state that we're in. Everything that we want to do can be done through just a mobile phone.
Mm-hmm.
Every software we use, whether it's Canva, uh, Google Sheets, Google Drive, everything has an app. You're always one click away from work.
Yeah.
And somehow I feel like that does not allow me to actually disconnect. Every time I've truly wanted to disconnect from work, I've either had to go someplace where there's no network and I cannot use my phone, or I've had to consciously delete all the apps on my phone, turn off the notifications, because if it pops up, I'm going to see it. There is
Mm-hmm.
no way I'm not going to see it.
It's funny you're saying that, because this time when I was in India for vacation, it took me a while. It took me like the first, I was on vacation. I'd taken paid time off,
Yeah,
but I guess like it's also been a while since I worked full time, right? Because we were in school, and that was the first time I was taking off, like after
yeah,
working for like 10 months. And it took me a while to adjust to that, to feel like, okay, like it's fine, I don't have to wake up and check, and like it's going to be
yeah,
okay. Everybody at work told me, they're like, nothing's going to stop just because this one
yeah,
person's off, so relax. But no, it was hard, it was so subconscious. And I remember, I think when we were traveling to your wedding, or somewhere like in Delhi or Bombay, I heard somebody's Teams call, that like tone
yeah.
when you get a team. it was just a weird feeling. I like, suddenly
Yeah,
my body became all alert and like, I was like, calm down, chill, go back to vacation mode. So,
it's
um,
tough. It's tough.
it's your body and your mind gets used to it, right? But as you're talking about this, there's another thing that I'm seeing a lot on social media is where people talk about as much as always on cultures not healthy and like it would be ideal to go back to the utopian world where laptops didn't exist and you left work at work. Now people are trying to do that, and I don't know if you've seen these reels where like Gen Zers sort of educate other Gen
Yeah,
Zers
how
on
to tell your manager that you'll do what you're paid for and stuff like that, right?
exactly, and like
Yeah,
draw clear boundaries and things like that, which I think is important, but also sometimes it feels like they are becoming a little toxic. It's like it
toxic
makes me feel
positivity.
like not just positivity, sometimes it's making me feel bad about being passionate about what I do. It's like
Yeah,
I'm like
absolutely.
because sometimes for example, I just moved into a new role and there are certain things in my new role that I have to understand better, learn better, and especially in a field like marketing, you constantly have to update yourself, right? So
Absolutely.
I do spend a lot of time like listening to podcasts or doing a lot of self learning, and I try to do that in my work timings, but most times I'm not able to, so I tend to do it like outside as well. So
Yeah,
then when I hear things like this, I'm like, am I doing things that are unnecessary? But actually, I'm enjoying doing it. I want to do it. But
yeah,
then I start to feel like, oh, so I'm not prioritizing life because of this. So these are like such contradicting views where you want something, but you're being told something. How do you see this? Do you also find it toxic?
yeah. The reason I said toxic positivity is because I understand that the idea behind these reels is to make you realize that it's okay to say no at work. I also know of people who don't necessarily love their job for what it is. They
Hmm.
love it because it gives them the financial freedom to do the things that they love. And in that case, these reels are great because it teaches them how to set these boundaries. But we've mentioned this, I think this is our third episode, and we've mentioned this one thing in every single episode, which is going back and understanding what it is that you are getting out of whatever you're
Hmm.
doing. What is it that's making you happy? If listening to that podcast making you happy, you do that. It's fine. But if turning off, switching off, and you know, maybe just sitting and watching Netflix in the evening is making you happy, you do that.
Yeah.
Not everybody has to have the same kind of ambition. Not everybody has to. You might also be in a job that you're just doing for a year and then you're going to bounce, and you might not want to put in the effort at that time. Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
just a stepping stone for you. So
Right.
understanding what you're doing and why you're doing it makes it so much easier to look for this balance that we're talking about, and then you can prioritize what's really important to you.
No, that makes sense. I think that sort of brings me to this other huge beast, which is health and
Oh
how work
God.
really takes a toll on it. I mean, I do
I have
want to talk
both
about.
good I have both
Go ahead.
good and bad examples for this. I've had work do good things to my health, and I've
Hmm.
also had work do terrible, terrible things to my mental health. So go ahead.
Let's hear it all.
Let's uncover. Let's
Yeah,
unleash the beast.
go for it.
I think there's I'm assuming there's two parts to this, right? There's physical health and then there's
Hmm.
mental health. Mental health is definitely, I think, a lot more impacted because sometimes when there are celebrations in the family or in my social circle and I can't make it because maybe I don't have a leave or maybe it's a hectic time at work or something like that, I get a lot of FOMO. And I'm like,
Hmm.
is it really that important that I'm missing out on memories that are going to last me a life? I might leave this job, but these memories will stay with me. And then there are times where I'm, say, in a meeting. This has actually happened to me, and I'm getting a call from a friend. And I disconnected it because I was in a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I get a second call, and then I just leave her that message saying, please call you later in a meeting.
Yeah.
After the meeting gets over, I call her back and I'm like, hey, what happened? And I can hear her crying and sobbing because something's happened. And at that time, my first thought is this meeting, which would have 100% been an email, is the reason I couldn't be there for my friend. Was it really that important? So, this guilt and this FOMO of not being able to do enough things for the other aspects of my life brings a lot of anxiety, a lot of overthinking. Uh, it's it's made me. It sometimes even makes me lose confidence in what I'm doing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do I know what I'm doing, or am I just haphazardly doing whatever is in front of me?
Yeah. I
What
think
about?
it's two things, right? Like, especially with this specific situation, I think it's important to also be able to, one, forgive yourself and
Yeah,
be like, this is not something that was in your hands in the first place. And if you've given a certain commitment at work and then you're just there for that, that's the reason you couldn't pick up her call. And everybody's going to have
yeah,
these different situations throughout the day. But also, I think it's equally important, um, or at least it's a nice to have if you're at a workplace with the team that understands things like this happen. It's human and does not trivialize any of these things, right? I
yeah,
think that makes a huge difference. And
absolutely.
I don't want to make this a generic statement, but now I work with a lot of women leaders, and
Oh,
I
I know
and
where this is
I
headed.
find it a lot more comfortable to talk about
Absolutely,
things,
absolutely,
and they don't trivialize it, right? Like, everything is important, and as long as it has an impact on you, it's an important thing, right? And I
absolutely.
think that is super important at
Yeah,
your
I mean,
workplace.
we're not, it's not like there are two sides to us, right? There aren't two different sides to us that if something happens to me in my personal life, if I'm having a bad mental health day for any reason whatsoever, that's not mutually exclusive to my work personality. Like, it's
Hmm.
going to affect my work and vice versa.
Yeah.
Say you have a huge argument with your boss at work, it is going to affect the rest of your mood and for anything that follows. Even if
Mm-hmm.
it's a dinner with friends, you're going to be in a sour mood.
Yeah.
So, expecting anyone that you work with, including yourself, honestly, to keep personal and professional separate at all times is a very unreasonable ask. And I 100% agree with you. Women are, at least in my experience, the women that I have worked with have been much more receptive
Hmm.
to these kind of conversations and this kind. But having said that, I have also worked with some men who are very, very conscious. They might not understand, they don't pretend to understand what you're going through, but they understand that something's off. So
Yeah.
you do you. So lots of respect for anybody of any gender, any rank, anything who understands this idea or even attempts to understand it. Huge
Totally.
props to them. Since we're talking about, you know, other people helping us manage um, our mental health at work and in life, I think one of the most important things that I've learned is communication really is the golden key,
Mm-hmm.
both at home and at work. Because when I used to live with my parents, and I was considered the child of the house, I'm not anymore, but when I was considered the child of the house and I used to go to work, all I had to do was, tell my mom, listen, I'm leaving at 9:30, keep my breakfast, keep my tiffin ready, wake up at 8:30, shower, pick up my stuff, and bolt out the door. Come back home. If I'm coming late, I'll just text my mom, listen, don't make dinner for me, I'm not coming home. Or listen, I'm on my way home, I'm very hungry, keep dinner ready. I could tell her that, okay, it's hectic at work, do this for me, please. And she would do it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and at the same time, even friends, you want people in your life who understand um, where you're coming from. So there are times where some of my friends say won't be available, especially now that I don't live in my home city. When I go back, I have to make even I have to make conscious effort to remember that Asta, just because you have come into town does not mean everyone can drop everything and be there to meet you.
Yeah.
That's not how this works. So I make it a point that before I plan any trip, I will ask everyone, guys, what's your schedule looking like? Do you think you have time to meet me? Because that's my purpose of coming there.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding that sometimes it's not that your friends don't want to be there for you, it's just that they can't right now. They have
Yeah.
their own thing going on. Is super important.
No, totally. And now that you mentioned scheduling and finding calendars that match, what a nightmare. I mean, I think this is something that's been a struggle for a while now, like with friends, with family, with
Yeah.
everything. And and now I'm suddenly like, maybe this American
Mm.
culture of having calendars for your entire day, your coffee, your everything mapped out in your calendar is a
Yeah.
good thing. I'm like, maybe they got it right. I don't know if I'll ever be able to do it, but
You
I don't
know,
know.
I had a friend once when we were
Mm-hmm.
still in undergrad
Mm-hmm.
tell me, we were just talking about something like somebody said, send a calendar invite for dinner or
Yeah.
something like that as a joke. And this friend of mine goes, if I ever tell you to send a calendar invite to meet me, say no. Don't even try to meet me. I am clearly not giving you the importance. But now I'm thinking, dude, it's not about importance, it's about memory.
Yeah.
It's about no, like right now when I went to, and not just for work, okay, even for personal life. Right now, I went back to Bombay and I had a bunch of like errands and doctor's visits and all of those things to do. And I kid you not, the number of times I have overscheduled myself because I forgot that this was another. I
Mhm.
already had this time committed to something else. It was not funny, and after 5 days, I got so exasperated. I was like, okay, everything has to go on a calendar. I cannot remember everything from yoga class to dinner at a friend's house has to go on because I don't want to overcommit to someone. I don't want to, double block my time and end up not utilizing it at all.
Mhm.
So maybe that's a friend and not a foe. Maybe.
I think so too. I think so too. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of productivity apps, and there's a lot
Yeah.
of new technology around this. I guess we need
Yeah.
to figure what works for us. Because for me, I'm not one of those people who can maintain like a pretty journal, or even like I use Notion. I'm not someone who has like a
Oh
cutesy
God.
template on
No, I
Notion.
can't. I
Yeah,
can't do
the
Notion. It
stuff.
intimidates me. Absolutely scares the bejesus out of me. I cannot. I have had a subscription. We got it together, remember, back in
Yeah, yeah,
Northwestern.
yeah,
I am so scared of that app because there is so much going on. There are so many tabs, so many templates. There are tutorials. People are
yeah.
making money out of selling courses
Templates.
that teach you how to use Notion.
Yeah,
How? It's
yeah,
not. It's not for me at
yeah.
all.
Like, I mean, my brother introduced it to me. He's one of those people who enjoys
Yeah,
creating
that
these
we know.
templates, having a structure, and all of that, right? For me, I use it because it has a lot of functionalities that fit my needs, both for work and for my personal
Yeah,
life. But I don't know, I would rather sit and like doodle on my notebook, but I will not make it pretty. I'm like, this is not something that
100%.
needs to look pretty.
Yeah.
If there is one thing that I don't care about its aesthetic, it's my Notion. So I think, but I don't know if you've heard of this other app called Motion. Have
Okay.
you?
No, I haven't.
So it's basically like, so I've not used it extensively, but it is also one of these productivity tools, but it has AI in it. So it's similar to Notion, where you sort of feed it with all your
Yeah.
tasks and your priorities and
Yeah.
things like that, and then it sort of auto populates your calendar based on the priority and based on your tasks, and tells you when to do what, so that you could make the most efficient use of your time. So
Oh God, no.
yeah.
I would feel so controlled. The lack of control on my own life would it just drive me nuts.
No,
Cannot.
that's
In
what I was
fact,
thinking. I will have control issues, and I
yeah,
think it might work for some people.
yeah, of course.
Yeah, I guess like for me, that's not the kind of working style that
Yeah,
works for me, because I feel like this is something I've just recently noticed about myself. I'm much better or much more productive if I have the liberty to switch between a couple of tasks at a given time, right? Because
yeah,
I'm doing something, I hit a
absolutely.
block, I want to do something else, come back to this. And I think that's important for me, and
Yeah,
that's how I work. But maybe for some
absolutely.
people, they love getting stuff done, checking things off their list, and moving forward.
Absolutely. Like I said, I got so intimidated by Notion that I realized I've bought a subscription. So now I'm guilty of having paid for it. So I am not using it. I'm not using anything else because we have paid for Notion. And the result is I'm not doing any of the organizing that I want to do. So eventually I just went back and I went back to pen and paper. They are my best
Hmm.
friends. And I have these two friends who run a self dev personal development brand. So they make a lot of products that help you increase self-awareness, your productivity, etc.
Mm.
And one of the first things that they came up with was a priority pad. I've never bought it, but I really like the concept. It has like these three separate booklets where one section is must happen today,
Mm.
the second section is good to happen today, and the third is can be delegated to later. And I think that's brilliant. When I write these things down, I'm like, okay, it's clear in my head, this is what I'm supposed to do. And
But
then I can
as,
decide when and how to do it.
yeah.
But what I also started doing, is so I saw one, how influencers post like a picture of the calendar saying so excited for the coming week or something like that. One of them posted this recently, and I saw that on her calendar she had time blocked off for everything from a paddleboard session to a hair wash to a dinner with friends to multiple other things that were both
Mm-hmm.
personal and work. And what really sort of struck out was the fact that the importance given on the calendar to something that's work and life is
Mm-hmm.
the same. You're blocking off an hour to work out. If you had a meeting in that hour, you would attend it, right? So think of this as a meeting because for me, one of the first impacts of hectic work life have been effects on natural cycles like sleeping, eating. Like I will stay awake even if I've had meetings all day. I think you had that kind of day today where you had meetings
Mm-hmm.
back to back to back with no breather, right? I will stay up even after my eyes are burning and they are begging me to go to sleep. I will stay up and I will doom scroll, I will read, I will watch something, I will do something that's going to help me decompress. I will not go to bed even when I should.
Yeah.
Or say if it's a hectic day, I don't have time to make lunch for myself. I'll just eat some nonsense food, absolutely non-nutritious food, and call it lunch. My posture will go off because I'm on my laptop for such long hours. And the first thing I drop, I'm very guilty of doing this, is going to the gym or having any form of exercise. The first thing that gets dropped from my calendar, and then I feel even more guilt about it. So the idea that this person who is at least supposedly doing really well would block it off. It's on your calendar. It's done. You're busy.
No, that's what I was
I think that's
gonna like talk about it, right? Because I feel like when you were talking about that priority pad thing, I feel like
yeah,
I would also tend to do that. I would put everything that's like personal or not work to can be delegated for later, and that is not
yeah,
healthy at all. That's
yeah,
definitely the takeaway from here. But Asta, I think you mentioned something recently when we were talking, and I think it would be nice for you to talk about the whole habit stacking thing. I found it really cool. I think you should talk about
yeah.
it.
So um, I used to do this in my first job, and I learned it from my boss from back
Mm-hmm.
then. What I would do is all of my calls that have to be taken. just using AirPods, like audio calls, right? All of my audio calls would be scheduled for 1:32 and onwards, in a way that post lunch, I would not go back to my desk. I would put on my AirPods and just walk around. My office was in a industrial estate, so we would walk around. I would just walk around and take the call for 25-30 minutes. And what this would do is, it would make sure that I did that post lunch walk that everybody
Hmm.
says is good for your metabolism. I would beat that afternoon slump that you feel at work where you're a little lazy or a little droopy, and I'd get my work done. And I recently found a term for it, again, courtesy of Instagram, it's called habit stacking. And that allows you to use your time to further both things you want to do for yourself on a personal level and for work. And I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, and I think it's any two three things that really make a
Absolutely.
difference, right? Like
Yeah.
like when you were talking about the whole decompressing thing. For me,
Yeah.
that's the most important part of the day. Like you said, I will be up until 3, but I cannot, because I feel like I've not had any time for myself, and that's the biggest thing that I feel FOMO for. Otherwise, I feel like I've
Yeah.
attained JOMO in life, where for the most part I'm just happy missing out things. But that's one thing I cannot not have in my day. But
Yeah.
after you spoke about this, I've sort of started using my decompressing time when I doom scroll to also do these like exercises, workout stretches that you can do when you're
Yeah.
lying down, when you're sitting, which I always want to do. I always keep thinking, oh, I should do this when I'm at work, or I should do this when.
Yeah.
But now, because in my head, I've sort of combined these two things together, and I'm like, every time I do this, I do this as well. It's actually working out well for me.
I love that. I'm so happy to
Yeah.
hear that. So I think our time is coming to an end. Uh, do you have any final thought?
I think the one final thought I have is work life balance is something that would keep changing, like we've talked
Mm-hmm.
about. Your
Mm-hmm.
priorities change, your days change, your,
Mm-hmm.
where who you live with, where you live, all of these things change.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to approach it with an open mind, and
Yeah.
like don't judge yourself, right? Don't judge yourself
Yeah.
for not giving enough time for work or enough time for life, or not having the most efficient balance or the most wholesome balance, because it's not always possible. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
The one thing I've learned this year that is pertaining to what we're talking about is that it's very important to have empathy towards yourself.
Hmm.
Give yourself the time to even decide if you're not in the position you want to be in, and to find a course of action to correct it. Everything's going to take time. So have empathy towards yourself. Give yourself grace that I am doing my best. Just do your best every single day, and that should be good enough. And the third is ask for help. It's
Yeah.
it's not very difficult. Look for help from people you trust, and don't try to do everything alone. And remember that the page will turn. Tomorrow, work, life, the so-called balance you're after is not going to look the same, and you're going to have to do this all over again. So again,
Hmm.
empathy and grace, extremely important. Treat yourself with kindness, please.
Agreed. Okay,
Right?
time to go give myself some life and grace because I've had a long day. So
Absolutely.
yes.
I hope everyone listening has liked the episode. If you have any thoughts, both in agreement or disagreement with us, we'd love to hear. So email us, message us on Instagram, or leave comments here, and we'd love to get back to you.
Yeah,
See
we've
you
been
next
hearing
time.
some great feedback,
Oh,
so
yeah.
keep that
Mm-hmm.
coming, and thanks for taking time and listening to us.
Yep.
Thank
See you next
you.
time. Bye.
Bye.